Alright guys, welcome back to Life of Birch. This is Birch, and I realized the other day that I've owned my VFR750 for just over 5 years. So I wanted to make a quick video doing kind of a 5-year review of my experience with the bike, what I think of it, and most importantly, we're going to break it down into my top 3 likes and my top 3 dislikes. Hopefully this helps you if you're considering getting the bike, and if you already own one, make sure to let me know what you think about my likes and dislikes. Let me know what you would add to the list or what you agree with. I'm excited to do this. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into it.
Perfect.
Alright, so just a basic overview to give you some background. This is a 1992 VFR750. This is the first bike that I've ever owned, and I've owned it for just over 5 years. I bought it from my buddy who bought it from the original owner, which was a member of his family. Bike currently is about to hit 46,000 miles. So it's kind of up there. Bike's 28 years old, so obviously it's at the point where it is historic. So that's one of the nice things about it, is that you can tag it historic. It doesn't need to pass inspection, emissions, anything like that. I think insurance for this bike is like $60 a year, which, I mean, you can't beat that. So I bought the bike from my buddy just over 5 years ago. When I bought it from him, I only spent $1,300 on the bike, and he was gracious enough to let me do a payment plan, because at the time I could not just buy it outright, and I'm super glad that he was able to do that, because this bike has been a blast. Now, when I bought the bike, it was bone stock. I had a friend lovingly tell me that it looked like the purple Power Rangers motorcycle. Insert picture of the bike originally here. And since then, I have added some modifications to the bike to make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit newer, and kind of blacked it out. I cut down the rear fender and took off the hideous turn signals that stuck out from the sides of the back. I added the Delcovic high mount exhaust. I added a Corbin seat to the bike, and also had the passenger portion reupholstered with a kind of stickier material, so that when my wife rides with me, she doesn't slide around on the back. I added some mirrors to the front that take away the rubber sheathing that goes over the stock ones. These mirrors are just off of one of the newer VFRs, and they're just direct bolt-ons. I added a blacked out windshield that I just got off of eBay. Really helped change the look of it. And last but not least, I added some adjustable clutch and brake levers to the bike, kind of by necessity, because I dropped the bike over and bent the stock one. Alright, now that we've gone over kind of an overview of the bike and my ownership, let's get straight into the top 3 things that I like about the bike. Alright, so kicking us off at the number 1 spot has got to be the single-sided swing arm. If you've watched any of my other videos, I'm sure I've talked about it there, but it's just because I really can't get over it. The single-sided swing arm just looks so good, so classy, and definitely sets the bike apart from just, you know, your average sport bike, average sport touring bike, whatever the case is, because you just really don't see a whole lot of bikes nowadays that have the single-sided swing arm, and especially with the kind of blade-looking rear wheel, it just sets it off so nice and looks so good. That was definitely one of the first things that attracted me to the bike. And while we're talking about the single-sided swing arm, we can just talk about how the bike looks overall. It might be 28 years old, but after I took off the graphics and kind of blacked the bike out a little bit, it looks a lot more modern. I tell people all the time that it's a 28-year-old bike, and they don't even believe it because of just how timeless and good that it looks. And of course, the single-sided swing arm is part of that. So, first thing is the single-sided swing arm. Alright, now for the number 2 spot of the things that I like the most about this bike. The number 2 thing has got to be the fact that this bike is, I don't know if I want to use the word rare, but it's just uncommon, I would say. Part of that could have to do with the age, but you know, you just don't see them all that much. It's not like every single kid that's riding around on a Sportster or an R6 or a CBR, any of those kind of more common everyday bikes. I think I've only ever seen one person out in the wild riding a VFR750. Personally, I like that because, you know, it's not a Mr. Me Too bike where it's like, I have an R6. Oh, really? Me too. Like, oh, cool. It also kind of like opens the lines for conversation because of that. I'll be stopped at a stop sign and have older guys come over and go, oh man, I used to have a VFR back when I was your age. I used to love that thing. How do you like it? And you know, you just don't get that with the more common bikes, I feel like. All right, and the third thing that I love about this bike has got to be the V4 engine. It just felt like a no-brainer to throw that one in there because, you know, I'm not just talking about how it sounds, even though it does sound phenomenal, but I'm also talking about the reliability of the engine. You know, this bike is kind of, I don't know if renowned is the right word for it, but everybody knows how reliable this bike is. I've had to do minimal maintenance on it in the time that I've owned it. It's to the point where on one of the VFR forums that I'm a part of, there's even a guy who was asking for advice about rebuilding his engine, and everyone's like, rebuilding your engine? What happened? Why do you need to rebuild it? There's no way you need to rebuild it. These things run forever. And, you know, from what I've seen, that's true. There's people with over 100,000 miles on these things, and obviously you still got to do some maintenance and all that kind of stuff, but you just don't see that every day. So not only do you have the reliability, but you also have the incredible sound behind it. It's a V4, so it's not like an inline 4 or something, so you get that distinct sound out of it. And one time I even just for funsies, ran it without a muffler on it for like a couple days, and this thing sounded like a freaking muscle car. It sounded like a mini V8. You get that Ducati sound with a price tag of a mountain bike. Alright, so let's run back through my top 3 reasons that I love this bike. 1, sexy single-sided swing arm and just great looks all around. 2, it's not very common. You just don't see them every day. And 3, that beautiful V4 sound and reliability. Alright, now that we have covered the 3 things that I love the most about the bike, let's get straight into the main reason that I know all of you are here and talk about the 3 things that I dislike the most about the bike. So I'll start out by saying that I was kind of hard-pressed to find things that I disliked about the bike when I went to put these lists together. It was actually easier to find things that I liked about the bike than it was to find things that I disliked about the bike. I found myself having to narrow down the things that I liked and kind of have to stretch to find things that I disliked about the bike. But with that said, obviously there's going to be things that everyone dislikes about something, so let's get straight into it. The first thing that I dislike the most about this bike is just the age of it. And obviously that's unavoidable. They don't make these bikes new anymore. I get that. But for me, I like to ride bikes more than I like to tinker with them. And not to say that I've had to do a whole lot of tinkering or working on this bike, but I'm a millennial. I'm new age, okay? Carburetors, come on. I don't know anything about them. I don't want to mess with them. Not that I have to all the time, but when I have buddies that have fuel-injected bikes and let's say it's a 45-degree day and we go out, they hit the button on their bike, starts up first try. They don't even need to warm it up. They just buzz right off. Meanwhile, I'm sitting back here. I got the choke in, and you know, sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 tries to start it because it's cold out, and then once it's cold, or once it starts, you gotta warm it up. And obviously with age, you know, you have things that are gonna wear out. You have bushings that are gonna wear out, fork seals that are gonna wear out. When a bike has 46,000 miles on it, it's just not typically as easy as, you know, if it's a 3-year-old bike that you know you can just hop on it and go every time. Alright, now let's get into the second thing that I dislike the most about this bike, and that is going to be the weight of the bike. And I know that for lots of VFR owners who are watching this, they're ready at their keyboards. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's not actually that heavy. Like, you gotta take the age into consideration and blah, 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 blah. And I get that. It's not a super heavy bike, especially for what it's designed to do, but, you know, it's not the lightest bike either. And that doesn't matter when you're doing long touring trips and everything like that. It's great because the bike stays nice and planted. You're not getting blown around by the wind at all. But when it comes to, you know, just scooting around town, can you throw it around some twisties and have some fun? Absolutely, but does it kind of feel like a whale compared to an actual sport bike? Of course it does. And I'm not saying that it's meant to handle like a sport bike. I'm just saying if you're looking for a bike that is super light and nimble and flickable, this may not be it. And of course some of that could come down to the age factor also. You know, you have the suspension wearing out, which I haven't replaced, and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, it's just not the lightest bike ever, and that's one of my biggest gripes with it. Alright, and the third and final reason that I dislike this bike, and I gotta say, this is the one that I was stretching for. I was struggling to come up with a third reason that I dislike the bike, and at the end of the day, the third reason actually isn't a reason that I dislike the bike. It's just a known issue with these bikes that I fortunately have not experienced, but I feel like needs to be addressed because I've heard of people having the issue, and that is the electrical system charging issue with these bikes, the regulator rectifier issue. Like I said, I can't speak on it too much because I've never actually personally had that issue with these bikes, but from what I understand, something with the electrical charging system on these bikes, I think the gauge of the wires is too thin to handle it or something like that. People's charging systems burning up and them having to replace it with thicker wiring and whatever it is, because it's just not charging the battery and they're out and the battery dies and they're left stranded. People have said that they have to carry extra regulator rectifiers with them in their bags. Fortunately, knock on wood, I have never actually experienced that, but like I said, if it's one of the top concerns with these bikes, I feel like it had to be addressed as the number 3 thing that I disliked with it. Alright, so that covers the top 3 things that I dislike about the bike, and let's just kind of get the cliff notes of that. The first dislike about the bike is its age. The second thing I dislike about the bike is its weight, and the third thing that I dislike about the bike, which isn't even really a concern for me, is the electrical charging system issues that lots of people seem to have with them. Alright, so that's going to wrap us up. My top 3 likes and dislikes of the Honda VFR750. Hopefully you got something out of this video, and if you're already a VFR owner, I gotta know, leave a comment. What'd you think about my likes and dislikes? Would you have added anything to the list personally? Do you disagree with anything that I said? Do you think I'm a total freaking idiot? Either way, leave a comment, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're in the market for one of these bikes, hopefully it helped you out. You really can't go wrong. It's a great all-around bike. Just make sure you keep in mind the likes and dislikes that I mentioned when you're looking, and maybe watch some other review videos on here before making a decision. But really, you can't go wrong. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace!